It's Don here from the board. Thanks for coming along and checking out this video. Today is going to be the first part of probably a number of videos looking at the newer 3018 Pro CNC machine. Now this machine has been sent to me courtesy of Banggood, so thank you very much Banggood for sending me this unit to review. And I guess it was really important for me to be able to check out this unit since it is a updated version of the machine that I was quite critical of quite a while ago. So I did 4 videos, I think, off the top of my head in regards to the 3018 CNC machine. There'll be some cards up the top there that you can check out either the video or the playlist there. But I just want to have a quick recap of that machine before we have a look at the Pro machine. So let's go to the desktop. Okay, so I've got the 3018 here in front, and it's quite large. It doesn't fully fit on my desk, so I'm going to have to jiggle around a little bit, but it's a bunch of these struts that have some lock nut things, and it was quite cumbersome to put together. You had to get the angles sorted with these angle connectors, and you had to get them all tightened up with the right amount of tension to get them into right degree angles to be nice and tight and fitted. The actual drive rods and everything else, you had to figure out a way of being able to align them so that they would actually be straight and not at an angle, which would cause jamming and things like that. I had the bad luck of getting a bent drive shaft for the X-axis, which caused my stepper motor to jam because it was actually trying to flex up and down. Now I got around that by printing a custom 3D printed bracket which I attached that allowed it to give it a bit of wobble and slack so it could actually move and do what it needed to do. Other issues that I found was it's got a 3D printed spindle block holder, and that cracked on me when I was trying to readjust my spindle, so I had to use a hose clamp to get around that. I upgraded the spindle from the brass adapter that it came with to the ER11 chuck system, which worked really good, so I could use larger sized bits. And just vibration in general was quite impactful on this because the lock nuts, these blue connectors here to the actual stepper motors, keep vibrating themselves loose. And so, you know, I've put hot glue in a couple of different spaces, and you would probably be well advised to use something like a thread lock medium to help hold these adapters in place so they don't shake loose and give you inaccurate back and forth movement. As far as it goes for a very rudimentary kit, an entry-level kit to get into playing and understanding CNC and getting something out of it, I thought it was okay, and it was reasonably priced. So what does the Pro version of this deliver on top of what this original version provides you? So let's have a look at the actual listing and check out what it claims, what it says that it should be providing, and then we'll have a look at the box. We might cut into a time lapse and then come back once I've actually built it to talk about it before I run into additional things like separate videos for cutting and things like that. So there's the listing itself on Banggood. So as I said, it's the Pro. It's a 3-axis mini CNC with adjustable speed, bunch of pretty photos, and it claims that, you know, it can do a whole bunch of different things. Now, there's some review videos in other languages than English, and here's the detail. We've got a working area roughly of 30 by 18 by 4 in depth, and it says it's 4.5 kilograms. Now, the box tells me it weighs more than 4.5 kilograms. The actual main unit might weigh 4.5 kilos, but then you've still got additional things on top. The box weighs 7.3 kilos. That's what the sticker on it says from shipping. So just be aware of that. The actual unit and frame might be 4.5. Then you've got the power pack and potentially other things on it as well. It's 240, 110. That's okay, not an issue. Comes with a 2-pin plug. Probably need to use, you know, one of these travel adapter things to get it working locally here. and runs off 24 volts with a USB connector for data. Now, there is some software that you can get which I think is just a Gerbil, but there's links for that available here, and as I say, it's an upgraded machine. The features that they talk about here for upgrade though, and it's really important to understand, is this diagram, right? So the stepper motors are in a fixed position. You no longer have to put them on a bracket and try to line them up to where the drive rod's other free end is. Because on the original, this end has a bracket with a bearing in it. And if you didn't get that height right, you had all sorts of problems. Similarly so in the y-axis, the rear stepper motor, okay? So the rear stepper motor being this one here at the back, it sits on the outside of the strut, and at the front, which I'm going to try and show you, there's that bearing in the middle. So once again, if you didn't line that up well on this actual rail and it was angled, you'd run into problems. You wouldn't get a good distance, it would jam and all sorts of things. So having them actually changed, modified the way that it's mounted with these pre-cut holes for all of these rail components is a major improvement that I think is going to be fantastic. The actual vertical arms that hold the assembly, you no longer have to do all of those angle brackets to get them lined up as well. So the fact that they've got them pre-cut, pre-drilled, and you don't need to do all of that alignment, I think is also a really great improvement. In terms of the central block, it looks like the vertical spindle holder is still 3D printed. So the durability there is to be, desired, I guess, in a way. But we'll just have to see how that goes. What is really interesting is all of the pictures show that it should come with the ER11 chuck already on it. So they've moved away from the really simple, small, thin brass adapter and given you something that's got a bit more versatility in the kind of bits that you fit into it. So I'm really keen to open it up and check it out and build it, and hopefully it'll sort of meet some of these expectations that this improved design will have in regards to being more rigid, being easier to assemble, have less, I suppose, tuning problems to get it up and running. Now, I'm just going to switch over back to the desktop for the moment. I'm going to move this off, and hopefully my wife's not going to kick it or stub her feet on it when she comes back around. And I'm going to just change the front camera because I want to show you how big the box is. It's huge. It weighs an absolute ton, and if those people can read Chinese, it says 7.3 there, which is at the bottom of that sticker that I've left that I haven't pulled off, right? That's it in kilograms. So when they talk about 4.5, it is definitely probably just the main unit and not the whole package. So I'm just playing around with OBS Studio because it gives me a bit more versatility. I'm still learning how to use it properly. So here's the huge box. Interestingly, there's a battery sticker on it. There's a Flammables battery sticker, and I don't understand why, because there's nothing in the actual product page or listing that shows that it has flammable batteries. Now, I don't know if capacitors on circuit boards have that requirement, and if that's the reason why it might have that label on it. But we'll see if what's in the box is what I thought was being sent to me. Now, if you see this surname over here, it's also a bit of a hilarity in that when they sent this to me, they gave me a tracking, and the tracking showed nothing. The tracking showed that it hadn't moved, it was pending, it hadn't been scanned in, and then it suddenly just went pop, turned up and said it was waiting collection. I went down to pick it up, and my local post office, they're really good. They know us very well. We get lots of parcels. We send lots of parcels. And they were like, oh yeah, here it is. But by the way, the sorting center wrote the wrong surname on it. So Chan is not my surname, but they wrote Chan on it. Thanks, Australia Post. Good job. But they were able to recognize that it was actually meant to be for us because they know the address, and they were like, yeah, that's your parcel, not some random person called Chan. Okay, so this box is huge and it doesn't fully fit, but we'll have a look at how well it's packed. You know, it's got a good medium to high density foam here. It's not damaged, which is always positive to see. The box itself wasn't too badly beat up. It's got a good thickness to it, nice spongy, so it's well protected. So I guess you can have some confidence that if you purchase one of these, it's going to get to you in good condition. Rightio, here's a manual, the 3018 Pro. It's very similar to the other one, where it shows you all its parts. There's some text in here. I can see some Chinese English in it already, because it says completed and ubiquity. I don't even know what ubiquity stands for, what it means. I'd have to go and Google that. Base and bakerlite C. I thought bakerlite was a type of plastic, so yeah, it's probably that type of plastic that they're using for the sidearms. So I'll follow that as best I can and try and put it together. Now, I love it. It actually gives you the warning now. It says tighten the bolt without using excessive force to prevent damage to the plastic. Well, it'd be nice if you didn't use 3D printed plastic. Wow, okay. So this is different. This is new. The 3018, this table portion was two pieces that you actually had to attach together with the brackets underneath and the running rods. So the fact that this is one piece is amazing. I love it. It gives you a much more stronger working platform that's less likely to move and flex if you've got a workpiece attached to it. Wow, this is really nice. This toolbox with all the parts in it is really nice. That's much nicer than the small one that you got from the other one. It's double-sided. They've got the springs and bolts in there. You've got the same blue adapters as last time in there, so I may have to pull out my little bottle of Loctite and use that. We've got more of those lock nuts there. Right, let's just prop that up temporarily over there. We've got the power pack that we're talking about. It feels very lightweight. Switching power 24 volts, 96 watts. So should do the job. We've got some of the bearings for the rails in plastic. We've got a small set of bits that comes with it, which is always nice. Cables. Here's the controller with some heat sinks, actually. That's actually really cool. It looks like there's some heat sinks in here, whereas the original version doesn't have heat sinks with the controller. We've got the backing plate that the controller will sit on. Right, now we get to the heart of it, and this entire unit is pre-assembled, and there's the ER11 on it. Absolutely fantastic. So you can see here, it tells you, if I can get the glare off it, there we go, ER11 5mm. There we go. Awesome. I think that is absolutely fantastic that it comes with it by default. Now, I'm just looking at that stepper motor, and it looks like it's still going to have contact issues if you drive that up too high. They've got the cutout for the motor, but it's still going to be hitting the bottom of that stepper by the looks of it. So you do need to be aware of that. This entire assembly is fully put in, and they've also, you know, taken care of inserting some of those bearings for you. Is this 3D printed this time? It is not 3D printed. It is actually a solid plastic. It is not 3D printed. That is that is solid. That is really solid. Now, the fact that they give you the warning about not over tightening and cracking it, well, whatever plastic this is, if it's bakerlite is a classic plastic. And when I talk about that, like, when I think of bakerlite, I think of phones and, you know, like kitchen mixers and bowls from like the 60s and 70s. That's what bakerlite is. It can become brittle with age and exposure to UV much faster than, say, like ABS plastic and things like that. But it is actually really nice to see that it's solid plastic now. So very much happy with that improvement. Right, let's put that back in. Now we've got two additional stepper motors here. So one of them's obviously going to be for your x-axis and the other one's going to be for your y-axis. We've got a bunch of our clamps that will hold your workpiece to the table. We've got the power cable and the data cables that will go together. And here are those pre-cut arms that I'm talking about with the holes for the alignment of your rods and your frame, which is really good. And they've actually already pre-inserted and pressed in that bearing, which I believe this one will then be on the left-hand side, since the right-hand side is where the stepper motor is going to be. So it's going to sit in that orientation. It's pretty hefty. It would have been nicer if it was metal, but I can understand the cost of that, and the weight that it would have added would have been quite significant. Now, the important other bits. So we got some more of this strut, which is really nice and light and strong. It's a pity that they don't clean it off very well before they sort of put it in. To be honest, having the plastic is nice, but having the swarf as part of the cutting, getting inside it, it's not pleasant to deal with as somebody who's putting something together. Most people are putting it together, you know, you'll probably understand. You're going to be in a workshop and it is going to get dirty and dusty and stuff like that. It's just small detail, right? Here's the front and rear pieces. So there's the bearing on the front, and there's the hole for the stepper motor and the mounts on the back. So that's pre-cut and pre-drilled and should line up quite well, I hope. Looks okay. Some more strut, and the important parts is these rods. These rods that are going to be critical. Now, I can see that they've already been broken or cut in transit, probably because there's a lot of weight and momentum to it. Hopefully this drive screw is going to be nice and flat. There's a bit of play on it, but I don't know if it's because this piece is not flat. Okay, so on that side it's okay. And then see how it's sort of over here, there's still one tie that's still on, but the other one's actually fallen off completely. So maybe they should think about packing it a little bit differently, a little bit better, so we don't have those kinds of issues if they're bouncing around. And that one looks okay. We'll just check how straight that is. Yep, so both are straight, so I should expect a bit better performance this time without the issues that I ran into last time. So I got a bit of machine oil on my fingers. Kind of have to expect that for what it is. And you do want to have it lubricated so it does move nice and smooth. So that is the contents of the kit. Not quite sure off the top of my head exactly how it went again, but that's okay. I'll be building it very shortly. It'll probably sit somewhere like, I know it had some foam boshed in here. Yeah, something like that. Sitting inside there. That can go on top, and then the table was sort of shoved in there. Right, now it's all back in, fitted nicely. I will get to building this kit in a moment. We might or might not see a time lapse because obviously, as you can see, it doesn't fully fit on my table, but we'll come back and we'll have a talk about the instructions, how well it came to be putting together, and then we'll see if we can power it up, get it going, maybe cutting some scrap plywood or something like that, and some final conclusions on this 3018 Pro. So thanks very much for checking out this video. Please, of course, hit that like button if you like seeing this kind of stuff and you want me to do more on these type of tools. Please hit that share button if you've got people who are interested in checking out the 3018 Pro CNC machine for their own projects and things like that. And I'm still puzzled on why it has this, because there's nothing in there that indicates that there are batteries that could catch on fire and cause you problems. In any case, that's it. It's a wrap for this video, and we'll see you very shortly after I finish building it. Alright, so we're back. Now that actually took me 2 hours to build this. Some of the comments that I will have in regards to the instructions in the booklet that came with it is there is not a lot of guidance. There's a lot of spare parts that are actually in this kit, and what I mean by that is in the toolbox you've got leftover different size bolts. You've got these washers that don't fit according to the instructions, so it's a little bit weird, but you know what, at the end of the day it's still buildable if you have a little bit of experience and you're willing to take stuff apart and put it back together, like I did a couple of times because I made mistakes in how I built it. It doesn't give you an order of operations, and the order of operations is really important when it comes to actually putting it together. And for example, the attachment of the nut to the stepper motor, the adapter to the stepper motor first, makes it so much easier to be able to put it back together. And that's one of the things. And there's a really weird step in here in that it tells you in the manual that there's these plastic washers that go on the other side of the PCB, and they have the big bolts that go through it into this black rail. The big bolts don't fit through it. Only the small ones do. And I'd originally spaced them so that the PCB would be lifted off this acrylic piece. I took them off after I saw it, thinking, oh, it should actually be going two in between, but they didn't fit. But after all the effort of taking them off and whatnot, I was like, you know what, I don't need to put it back on because it is not shorting the PCB. It works fine without it, just not very clear in this book. The other thing is the PCB doesn't look like this picture, and it also doesn't look like this picture. So you kind of have to use a little bit of smarts in what is there and what is not there. It's kind of an in-between, because it looks closer to this one than this one for some components, and the other way around on other components, which is really, really confusing. So I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on there, but the actual order of the ports for the controllers at the back is exactly the same regardless. So that's at least good. And I was able to set that up and put them in, and not an issue. So the battery pack is here on the side. One complaint I have about the battery pack is the cable length of it is insanely short, crazy short. So you will have to run either an extension board or a power board quite close to the machine. The length of cable to the power and the power unit is just really, really short. Now, I downloaded the Goebel software from the product description link, and it is version 0.8. I'm aware that Goebel is now up to 1.1. However, because I'm not very experienced and knowledgeable in using GitHub, I couldn't find a downloadable direct to run it. But I am using the version 0.8 that came in the software, which is on the screen right now. And I just want to show you that after everything that's happened, and also there's these heat sinks, and I don't know where they go. I think they're meant to go on the motor controller chips because they're the right size, but once again, the manual doesn't talk about that. So you do kind of have to think about the quality of their technical writing could be improved. Now, going back to the Goebel software. So the Goebel software is here, and you'll see that it's sitting idle because I've already connected it. So under the service settings, you can refresh that and it will find the appropriate USB port, COM8 in this context, and I've just left it at default and it's detected that without an issue. I've deliberately dragged the spindle speed down to the lowest possible rate just for safety reasons when I first spun it up, and I'm just going to turn that on now. And not that I don't trust that this thing's still safe, but I'm just going to use this bit of foam as an impromptu shield in case something does go wrong, even though I already turned it on before. So you should be able to hear that. That's the spindle going, and it is spinning in the direction clockwise, which I believe should be correct. Now the reason why I've hooked it up that way is because there's a red bit of paint on this side of the terminal which indicates the red positive for the connection to the power. Now, in regards to the other controls, so I've got it set up to one rotational step, and if I just go up to 5, you'll see that the step is actually working and moving. And then for up and down in the y-axis, it's really creaky, and I don't know if the creaky is because I've made everything really tight, or it's because it's quite new and it hasn't been oiled or lubricated. And on the z-axis, so the z-axis is really short. The z-axis only has 4 centimeters of travel, and it's actually quite reasonable where they've placed the motor because I racked it all the way up. I did crunch it a little bit going into the top. The housing didn't hit the motor on the stepper motor to the spindle motor as I had concerns before, because they've adjusted for that, and you can go all the way down without a bit in the ER11 chuck and it won't crash into the stage. Of course, if you do have a bit in there and you've got a workpiece in there, it definitely will crash into it because there's not a lot of clearance at all. But I'm just going to go down to the single step, and it's probably not really easy to see, but it is moving. it is actually moving. You'll just have to trust me that it's moving perfectly fine as it should. So I'm really happy with where it's at right now. In terms of construction, look, I already had an idea of how this was meant to go together, and having built the non-pro version previously, the only thing that I probably have made a mistake on the underside of the stage is that there's two ways that you can actually turn the pieces holding it, and one of them for me was flipped around. And now that I think about it, when I was sort of putting the rest of it together, I really don't want to have to strip this apart, but having those pieces on the bottom holding the stage could limit how far the stage can travel, because it's asymmetrical in its positioning. But I would not expect that I would run probably the full length of motion on this anyway. But if you really wanted to get the full length, you want to make sure that those pieces on the bottom, when you assemble them, will give you the most clearance before it hits the ends of the actual frame. Now, for me to take this apart right now, I could actually do that by taking off the 6 bolts on either side for the frame legs, and this will just come straight off, obviously disconnecting it electrically, and then I could pull apart this entire bottom frame piece. But obviously that's a lot of effort, which I'm not going to do right now because I'm not anticipating to do very large pieces on this. So I'm going to wrap this up now. It feels really strong. It's quite rigid. The thickness of these frame pieces are actually quite good. There is a little bit of flex when you're tightening it, but I suppose it gives and adds to that flexibility. Like, I cannot move or bend these. I'm not really that surprised because they are super thick. The original 3018, they were steel or aluminium beams anyway, so you weren't really going to be flexing them. But I have confidence that this is going to be quite rigid. And the tolerances in these rods, the holes that they milled out in them, were really, really good. What I wasn't a fan of in that respect, though, is that these two back beams, they only have a single hole, and there's nothing to stop them from rotating. But once you put the PCB plate here onto it, that does stop them rotating. It would have been nice if they'd given you double bars like they did for the side, because then you could have two holes, and that would have given you an extra level of stiffness in the frame without worrying about these rotating. Because if this rotates, it's actually going to clip the back of this unit as it slides. So that's just something to be aware of there. Other than that, I'm gonna finish up now by saying, okay, build, a little bit frustrating, better instructions. It looks pretty good. It looks fully functional. I'm gonna go away now and find a bit of time to set it up properly, get a bit in there, and see what it does, how it mills, if there's going to be any backlash or tolerance issues, and so on and so forth. And we'll come back with another video and check all of that out. So once again, thank you to Banggood for sending this unit for me to build, put together, and review. And if you like this kind of stuff, of course, hit that like button, subscribe button, share button, you know the drill. Right, that's it. It's been a long afternoon, so I'm going to go have some very, very late lunch. And of course, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.